Ruslan.
Why am I so hard on my fellow conservative brothers and sisters, whether the theologically conservative camp or the politically conservative camp, the Republicans? I'm gonna get into that because I think there's this kind of inaccurate notion floating around that I'm only hard on conservatives, if you will. Now, for starters, I go based on issue per issue, right? Based on Ecclesiastes 7:18, I've covered this verse. It says, it is good to grasp the one and not let go of the other. Whoever fears God will avoid all extremes. So I naturally, as a byproduct, tend not to jump into either extreme of either position, whether politically or what have you. However, there is some potential critique of me being like too harsh on conservatives. And I've really been thinking about it and trying to consider it and figure it out. And am I too harsh? And really thinking through it. And I was having a conversation with my buddy Daniel Golding. We were chatting yesterday at the gym and he asked me a question. He said, you have to choose one side, conservative or liberal, right or left. Which side do you choose? And I thought about it and I said, easy. I'm choosing the right. I'm choosing the conservative side. And he's like, oh, that's interesting, right? And then I was like, okay, this makes sense why I am, quote unquote, more harsh on conservatives. And I don't like to choose. I don't think you need to make a choice. I don't see the world as binary on every single issue. I think there's much more of a spectrum to politics, much more of a spectrum to theological views than people like to let on. And there's this notion now that if you aren't as conservative as someone, then you're a liberal. If you aren't as leftist as someone, then you're a conservative fringe person. And I think a lot of that is nonsense. I think a lot of that is a byproduct of social media. And I think a lot of that is this binary thinking. But to keep it all the way a buck, if I have to choose, which I don't, but if I have to choose and I look at which of my views align with, hey, more views to progress things and make things better, I do have certain views there, right? I think we can treat certain disenfranchised groups better. I think we need to make progress there. I think we need to make progress on certain fiscal policy, right? But if I'm looking at my overall views in terms of like, what do we need to conserve? The free market, the ability for people to try and build businesses, private property rights, morality, some degree of morality and God's laws, I will lean more on the conservative side with the caveat that more of a libertarian position, which is really leave me alone. Like, leave me alone, fam. And I wanted to address this because as I think about it, what bugs me is that the conservative side, if I'm honest, this is just my perspective on the macro ideas, and I'm going to get into the issues with the conservative side in just a second. So just follow me, okay? Just follow me. On the macro ideas, private property rights, the ability to build businesses, the free market, and some type of smaller government, of a more fiscally conservative government. Those 5 values, okay? Lower taxes, right? Those 5 values to me are very, very important values, if I'm honest with you guys, right? Because I think those are the most impactful. And I think the ideas that sometimes are pawned off as conservative ideas are more universal ideas, if you will, things like personal responsibility and so on and so forth. But they want to make it about the American dream and all these kinds of things. And I like those ideas. So why am I hard? Why am I hard? Because I believe that the best ideas win. Like, I really believe that. I believe whoever has the best ideas win. There's this Gary Vee things that I put up a couple days ago, and some of you guys have heard this, and this is from Gary Vee. He said there are 2 ways you can build the tallest building in town. You can either spend all your time and energy focusing on making your building the tallest, or you can go around and try to tear everyone else's building down. 2 ways to build the tallest building in town. One way is you just build the tallest building in town, the best ideas, the best product, whatever. The other is trying to tear down the other side, the other companies, the other buildings, the other people trying to get it, right? And so if we're really talking about ideas, then let the best ideas rise to the top. But this isn't the issue with the people on the right. This isn't an issue with their pundits. This isn't an issue with the way they communicate. And this was a lot of my conversation with Patrick Bet-David and Gerard and Adam and Zuby and the Valuetainment guys. So I said, hey, listen, if I'm honest, I like a lot of the ideas from the right, even though people consider me a centrist. I said the issue is the people on the right just got terrible ways of communicating it. The majority of what's being communicated is conflated straw man arguments about the fringe left instead of saying, these are our values. We value free market. We value entrepreneurship. We value being able to move across socioeconomic lines. We value starting from nothing and making something of your life. We value generational wealth and leaving a legacy. We value these things, right? Instead of saying, this is what we value, we go, they're bad and I'm going to attack them and not even accurately represent them. I'm going to create straw man attacks that don't really reflect the position, or it might reflect a very small position, and I'm going to generalize it as the broader umbrella of what people on that side believe, which at that point I start to go, well, are we now acting in good faith? Okay? When you know from people in your real life that, hey, not everybody over there believes some of the loony stuff, right? And I'm no fan of AOC. I'm no fan of the Green New Deal. I'm no fan of 70% taxes on people who make over $10 million, right? I'm not a big fan of that kind of stuff, right? But if you actually understand the positions, just present better ideas and don't conflate those. So then the question becomes, are there bad faith arguments? Are we not accurately representing the opposing side and then creating straw men instead of saying, here are the better ideas, here are the best ideas, and the best ideas will win? So then I have to stop and say, well, it don't really seem like you guys are doing that. It seems like whenever I look at a Chris Rofo and a lot of these guys, it seems like we're just making stuff up, or we're conflating stuff, or we're using junk drawer terms, or we're trying to otherize people, we're trying to dismiss people, we're trying to hurt people's reputation, we're trying to create very broad terms to define very nuanced ideas that most people share a spectrum of views, right? Whatever it is, whatever you want to have it, right? Whether it's, hey, we want to create more safety nets. And you go, well, what does that look like? Well, if you look at Sweden, and you guys could do your research on this, Sweden, which is often viewed as a democratic socialist country, which is what like Bernie Sanders is. If you look at Sweden and you actually dig away, Sweden is one of the most capitalistic nations. It's one of the most free market nations. They just have a higher tax rate than most places in the world, right? They have a higher tax rate for the average person. Here, we have more of a progressive tax rate. There, it's a higher tax rate on the average person. So, hey, if you look at Sweden, attack the actual ideas of democratic socialism. Don't do straw man attacks and think everybody wants North Korea or everyone wants Venezuela, right? If you're gonna talk about CRT, define it for what it actually is. Don't create a straw man like Chris Rofo did in terms of like being open, like, yeah, I'm just gonna create a junk drawer term to just dismiss everybody, and anybody who sees any type of desire racial justice or whatever, I'm gonna call them a Marxist, I'm gonna call them a critical race theory, and then you just create this junk drawer term, and anyone left of you is now a liberal woke avatar. Right? This is nonsense. And it makes me say, are you guys being disingenuous? I understand that it's for clicks. I understand that Crowder and Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens and all these folks, I understand that they're entertainers, but it makes me question, are you doing this just for clicks? Or are you acknowledging that there's a spectrum, that the people aren't binary right or left, right? And that's the part that bugs me, because if I'm honest, I actually believe and align more with people on the right, and that's why I pay attention more, and that's why I see the shenanigans there, and it bugs me. And I say, listen, you guys have a branding problem. You have a communication problem. Let me give you a very, very basic example. I don't know anybody that's more classy than the Obamas, okay? Think about the figureheads on the left. The Obamas, Oprah, okay? Very classy, very just the way they communicate, the way they carry themselves, very classy, right? And what's the opposite on the right? Who's the face of what's on the right? Who's over there? Trump? Right? Like, that's your guy? Like Trump, Rudy Giuliani, right? Like Governor DeSantis in Florida. You see what I'm saying? So the left just intrinsically knows how to communicate their ideas better, and they come off classier, and they come off smoother. And the people on the right, I think, have a lot of better ideas. Like if we go policy for policy, I agree probably with more right policies than Obama's policies, right? But he comes off so much classier and so much more calmer and so much more collective versus someone on the right who's a Donald Trump. And I know it's like policy over personality. I get that, fam. But you gotta understand how to communicate to people. You got to understand that people aren't just wired to think about facts. What are the facts? Give me the facts, buddy. Right? Like you have to be a bit more shrewd, and I don't see that, right? And again, I don't like a lot of Obama's policies, right? I'm not a fan. Okay, I think the way he's carried himself, especially as kind of the face of the left, I'm not a fan of a lot of that stuff. And so you have this weird dichotomy. I'll give you guys another example. They've done studies with younger people, and they say, do you have a favorable view of socialism or of capitalism? And as you guys all know, what's the phrase? If you're not a liberal when you're under 35, you have no heart. If you're not a liberal if you're not a conservative when you're over 35, you have no brain, right? And then most younger people, they have a positive image of socialism without quite understanding what it means. Now, let me go a little deeper. The phrase capitalism actually wasn't even coined by Adam Smith, who many will call the father of capitalism. It was coined afterwards. He never used the word capitalism, and the word really was hijacked by Karl Marx. So Karl Marx takes the term capitalism, because when you think of capitalism, you think of capital and you think of the industries owning the capital, right? And Karl Marx will go, no, the people should own the capital. So we have a branding problem with the word capitalism. We have an issue with the actual word capitalism, because when I say capitalism, you guys don't think small business owner on YouTube. You don't think Gary Vee. You don't think the dude who got an iPhone and built a 7-figure business hustling. You think Walmart. You think Amazon. You think 2008 bailouts. You think crony capitalism. You think corporatism. You think Amazon hiring people and kind of treating them like crap. That's not free market, right? So there's just even a branding problem with the way we're communicating these ideas, right? There's a branding problem when we're communicating these ideas. And if you look at what we are now with the free market has pulled more people out of poverty. It's built more wealth. It's right. It's just a fact. Here's some facts. Here's some facts. Those of you guys that are watching this, you kind of lean left and you're triggered and you're like, Ruslan, you're talking about capitalism. Here are some facts. 85% of America's millionaires are first generation rich. Okay, that is a fact. 85%. What does that mean? That means they are self-made. They did not inherit it. They did not win the lottery. They built it. 85%. That's $1 million net worth. Okay, 85%. Think about that for a second. There's over 15 million millionaires in America. Okay, 15 million. Okay, here's another statistic for you. 65% of America's billionaires are first generation rich. They did not inherit it. They did not win the lottery. Okay, 65%. Okay, there is over 500,000 people in America, 500,000 people that make $1 million a year. Okay, highest tax bracket, right? 500,000 people. Like, miss me with the little guy can't get ahead nonsense. Miss me with the little guy can't get ahead nonsense, right? So you guys know, like I love Gary Vee. I love Dave Ramsey. I love a lot of these voices that are going to be more entrepreneurial small business voices. And I think that starting a small business and understanding fiscally conservative policies, living below your means, getting out of consumer debt, starting a business, having a side hustle is usually the solution to a lot of the issues we're having in terms of the disparities between wealth, right? The inequality of incomes, starting a side hustle, starting a business, flipping on eBay, right? So on and so forth. And a lot of folks don't quite fathom that. And so again, how are these ideas to be packaged when one side comes across very classy? And I think that's changing, by the way. Like I'm not a big fan of like AOC's personality. I don't think she comes off very likable, but that's another time. And I've made videos about me not liking AOC or whatever. It's another conversation. But I think when you see one side, they come off classy, they come off collected, they come off like they have it together, they come off smooth, right? And the other side just comes off angry at the left. The right comes off angry at the left, and that's it. Like this side is angry, and this side is like elitist and smooth. It's like, fam, you got to rethink some of this stuff. You got to really reconsider how you're communicating these ideas if you want to take people and win over the minds of the youth instead of just primarily fighting a culture war. And that's my frustration. Why am I hard on the right? Because I see the right, I see conservatives primarily consumed with being about what they're against, with fighting a culture war. And when you're leading with the things you're against, it's not going to work out in your favor. When you're leading with the things you're against, it's not going to work in your favor. And you could talk about facts over feelings, but that's not going to win over people's minds, and that's not going to win over people's hearts. It's just not. Right? So you got to think about it. Think about the representatives. Think about when people think conservative, who do they think? Right? They think of a Ben Shapiro, snarky, nerdy type of figure. I think there's a branding problem, and I lean politically, and my theology, I lean more on the right, and I'm watching this stuff, and I'm like, yo, fam, we could do better. We could do better, and it's annoying that this is happening, and no one sees. It seems like they don't see it. And so again, what gets clicks isn't the thing that persuades people, right? Folks on the left have done a good job of infiltrating Hollywood, of infiltrating media, of infiltrating music, infiltrating culture. And so you're trying to persuade people over to your side, and they've done a killer job of that. Unfortunately, the people on the right, they're a little behind, so they just attack on the other side. And again, I'm gonna land back at Ecclesiastes 7:18. Whoever fears the Lord avoids all extremes. I'm gonna avoid all the extremes and just say, what are the best ideas? The best ideas should win. Articulate your ideas in a way that makes sense for you. If you can do that, then the best ideas should win. And I believe the free market, private property rights, personal responsibility, working hard, being financially literate, I think those are actually the better ideas for someone changing the trajectory of their lives and getting into that 85% of America's first millionaires or millionaires of first generation rates. I think that's more likely to change somebody's trajectory of their life, to position them to be more charitable, more giving, so on and so forth. So hopefully this answers that question. I'm not sure if it does, but hopefully this makes some sense.
Kingstream Entertainment. Ruslan.
Yo, thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. If you found it valuable, considering giving it a like and subscribing. This month, I'm releasing the Love What You Do collection, and to celebrate, I'm doing a 3-day virtual event to help us go from learning to love what we do to ultimately doing what we love. By the way, it's free, so hit the link in the description to grab your seat today.